The Golden Goblet by Eloise Jarvis McGraw. Chapter 1. The stream of molten gold flowed smoothly from the crucible, reflecting in its surface the cloudless blue of the Egyptian sky. The boy Ranofer slowly tightened his grip on the two stones between which he had held the crucible as he tilted it farther and farther, devotion in every careful movement of his hands and bare brown shoulders. Presently, the last drop of flame-colored liquid had run without splash or bubble into the hollowed stone. With a sigh of satisfaction, the boy set stones and crucible aside and wiped the sweat from his hands upon his cotton kilt. It was a good ingot. The goldsmith would be able to find no fault with it. Already the metal was setting, the brilliant red-yellow fading to scarlet, then to cherry. In half a minute it could be turned out, and the mold oiled for the next pouring. Dreamily, Ranofer watched the colors dull. Splendid images drifted through his mind, golden forms and shapes, any one of which might be the destiny of this very small ingot that he, Ranofer, the son of Thutra, had poured. It might become part of a wide and glittering collar, or the inlay of a fine dagger for one nobleman's tomb, or better, a cup fit for Pharaoh himself, shaped like a flower and hammered to fragile thinness. Well, perhaps not the cup, Ranofer admitted to himself after a little reflection. It was only a small ingot, after all. Besides, such a cup as he had pictured could never come from this particular gold house. No one here had the skill to fashion it, not even Rek, the goldsmith himself. Only Za, the greatest gold worker in all Thebes, could make such a cup. Za, the master, could make anything. From his artist's fingers sprang objects such as wonderful beauty, cups, bowls, boxes, necklaces, daggers, great golden collars, bracelets, exquisite amulets, that Pharaoh himself would be served by no other smith. To think I might have been his pupil some day, if my father had lived, Ranofer thought. He all but said he would accept me. Aye, if my father had not died, if I had never had to go and live with Gaboo, if I had never even heard of Gaboo. The unwelcome picture of Gaboo's face broke through Ranofer's preoccupation, scattering his daydreams and rousing him to present reality, in which Za, the master, had no place. He was aware again of voices, of the clang of tools around him in the mud-walled courtyard, and the sharp, hot odor of metal mingling with the soft afternoon breeze off the Nile. It was the month of Hathor, in the season of growing, and the air was cool despite the heat from the hooded furnaces that lined the courtyard. Even Lord Ra, the sun, did not scorch and burn in this pleasant winter time, but shed his radiant light beneficially upon the brown backs of the men bent to their work, striking blue gleams from their ink-black hair and snowy kilts, glancing with blinding intensity off gold ingots and gold wire coils, and the scraps and bits of gold that littered the low work tables. Instead of an answering sense of peace, Ranofer felt only the sore and familiar longing for other days, when he could have rejoiced in a gentle son and work he loved, when both his father Thutra and Za the master were a part of his life, a large part, and his half-brother Gaboo the stonecutter no part at all. Do not ruin the day by thinking of Gaboo, the boy told himself. Do you not see enough of him and his heavy hand at home? That ingot has set, and here you stand idle. He turned the ingot out and tried to lose himself again in his tasks, but the thought of Gaboo, like the ache of a tooth, was hard to lose. Besides, his tasks were those of a hireling. No matter how expertly he did them, he could not hope to progress to anything better, or even the most stupid apprentice did. No matter what illustrious futures he imagined for the ingots he poured, his own future remained, the same, pouring more ingots, making charcoal, sweeping off the jewelers' benches, while others engraved the daggers and hammered the cups, all because of Gaboo. Why can I not be apprentice? Ranofer asked himself for the 100th time. Because Gaboo does not wish it. But why does he not wish it? The pig! The son of Set, the devil! Why must he place me in here, in the gold house, if I am never to learn anything? No matter, it was useless to try to fathom the ways of that accursed one. His reasons were his own, and to protest brought only beatings, as Ranofer had found out long ago. Here he was, and here he would stay until Gaboo ordered otherwise. Ranofer picked up the ingot, which was now cool enough to handle, and carried it to the nearby workbench on which the draw plate stood. It was a circular slab of stone, held upright in a vise and pierced with a ring of holes of diminishing sizes. One of the apprentices stood there, drawing wire, his shoulder muscles bunched with the effort of pulling a greased reed-slim ingot through a hole just too small for it. It would be slimmer yet when it had passed through the hole. Then it would be passed through the one just smaller, and so through every hole in turn, growing longer and slimmer all the time until it changed from an ingot to a wire. On the bench beside the apprentice lay a coil of wire, finished and ready for its last annealing. Beside the coil lay a row of 3 thin ingots waiting to be drawn. Ranofer added his own, the thinnest of all. Perhaps by evening it would be a wire, rounded and tempered, ready to fashion into a linked collar for some lovely lady's neck. Somewhat comforted by the thought, he returned to oil his empty mold. Too late, he saw a familiar hunched figure emerging from the rear door of the shop, directly next to the pouring table. It was Ibni, the Babylonian porter, already bobbing and grinning at sight of Ranofer. Wishing Rek the goldsmith would suddenly send him on an errand to the other side of Thebes, Ranofer turned his back on the man and reached for the oil jar. Ibni only edged closer, ducked his head even farther between his shoulders, and scrubbed his hands together ingratiatingly. "Ah, greeting, and how is little Ranofer today?" he asked. His voice was like the sound of a badly made flute, and sibilant with his Babylonian accent. "I am well enough," Ranofer mumbled. "Indeed, this worthless one rejoices that it is so. And what of my reverend friend, your half-brother and protector, Gaboo, the stone-cutter? Is he also well?" "Aye." Ranofer smeared oil into the mold, keeping his frowning gaze directly on his work. He could not have said why his dislike of Ibni was so intense. The man's servility disgusted him, and so did his cheese-white hands with their dirty nails and the stained teeth he revealed in his constant grin. But it was more than that. There was something slimily questionable about the Babylonian that always sent prickles up Ranofer's spine. Why Gaboo permitted his occasional visits to their house was a mystery Ranofer had never cared to probe into. Gaboo and Ibni were certainly not friends. They were more like master and dog. "And the honored Gaboo, did he enjoy my little gift of date wine last week? Did he find it as tasty as ever, young Ranofer?" "He did not say otherwise." "What did he say, little one? Did he speak not at all when you handed the wineskin to him? For indeed you did hand it to him, did you not? In his own hand, as you have done before." "Aye, in his own hand, exactly as I have always done." Ranofer threw an impatient glance at Ibni and encountered the sharp glint he had often surprised in the other's usually vacant eyes. It vanished instantly, and the Babylonian smile spread wider than ever. Ranofer's distrust deepened accordingly. "What does he want, the sneaking serpent?" thought the boy. Aloud, he said, "How can I remember what he said now, 9 days later?" "Ah, well, it is of no matter. Doubtless my poor gift is not worthy of comment, though he honored me by enjoying it. It is a humble wine, but of a good flavor. My wife makes it herself from our own dates." "I know," snapped Ranofer, exasperated at hearing it for the 50th time. He knew also that Gaboo never drank the wine, though he always seemed eager to get it. Invariably, he waited until Ranofer was asleep, and then in the night secretly poured it out on the pavement of the courtyard. Many times the boy had seen the brown stains the next morning. Many times the boy... still damp and faintly reeking of fermentation. There was something about the whole thing that was not what it seemed, something from which Ranofer uneasily turned his mind whenever he thought of it. It was not healthy, he had long since learned, to pry into Gaboo's affairs. Meanwhile, Ibni was finally coming to what Ranofer recognized at once as the point of the conversation. "Aye, a very good wine, though humble. Now, if you would grant me the smallest favor, young Ranofer, pray tell your brother that I shall send him another little wineskin on the morrow, which I beg he will accept with my highest regard. Tarry a bit outside the shop tomorrow at sunset, and I shall put it in your hand." Ibni took himself off at last, stoppering the oil jug. With nervous fingers, Ranofer watched him sidle past the wire-maker's bench to the big water jar, get himself a drink too brief to indicate real thirst, and then go back through the rear door to his job of washing the raw gold. Ranofer was reminded of an adder slithering back into its hole. He did not want that water, thought the boy. He had no errand in the courtyard at all, but merely invented one that he might find out whether I put his precious wineskin into Gaboo's hand and tell me to wait for another tomorrow. But why? What is so important about a little skin of wine? Why can he not simply hand it to me sometime during the day, instead of making a great secret of it outside the shop? "Ranofer?" The boy jumped guiltily. It was Seta, the first craftsman, calling to him from inside the shop. Hastily he spread a scrap of clean linen over the mold and hurried across the courtyard. The light dimmed and cooled as he moved under the overhanging thatch of palm fronds and into the long three-sided shed. And in a corner glowed two of the box-like furnaces. On a low stool before one of them sat Rek, the goldsmith, using a pointed blowpipe to direct the heat onto a golden ornament. He held carefully in copper tongues. Three apprentices leaned over him watching, unmindful of the chatter of the porters washing raw gold in the big vats at the back of the room, of the weigher calling out numbers to the scribe standing beside the balanced scales, of the loud ping-ping of the second craftsman's hammer upon a half-finished bowl. Ranofer lingered a moment. He too would have liked to watch Rek work, to note his way with a blowpipe, and how the flame must heat the bosses of the ornament, thereby adding a precious detail or two to his scant knowledge of the craft he had loved since babyhood. But Seta called again. "Ranofer, come here, boy. By Ammon, I'll wager the snails would pass you by. Here, brush my table, and mind you not lose a grain of gold. I want the sweepings refined and poured again before the sun sets." "Aye, Neb Seta." As the first craftsman moved away, scowling as usual, to set a finished collar upon the shelf, Ranofer hurried to the low work table. A woven grass mat was spread on the ground before it. No one but Rek used a stool. Dropping to one knee and sinking back on his heel in the habitual pose of the gold worker, the boy took up the hare's foot and began to sweep gold dust scraps, clippings, and bits of wire from the table top into the sheepskin that hung beneath its scooped-out front edge. There was more gold to be recovered from these leavings than one would suspect. He had poured that slim little ingot now lying yonder in the courtyard beside the draw-plate from just such sweepings as this. Presently he would be pouring another. "I have finished, Neb Seta," murmured the boy. He scrambled to his feet and, unhooking the sheep hide from the table, emptied its contents into an earthen bowl. He had returned the hide to its place and was starting for the courtyard with the bowl when the deep, gentle voice of Rek, the goldsmith, stopped him. "Wait, Ranofer. You have forgotten to weigh your gold." "Weigh it? I have nothing but the sweep here, Neb Goldsmith." "Nevertheless, it must be weighed. Did you not hear my orders this morning, when, nay, I remember, I had sent you into the street of the potters to fetch those crucibles?" Rek sighed, arose from his stool, and limped across to Ranofer, still holding the golden ornament in his tongs. His heavy face was worn but kindly as he looked down at the boy. "Know then," he said, "that our weights do not tally properly at the end of each week, nor have they for some months. Gold has been missing in such small quantities that for long we blamed the scales, but it is not the scales." Deeply shocked, Ranofer stood with the bowl forgotten in his hands. "Gold missing?" he repeated. "A thief in the night, Neb Goldsmith?" "Nay, the guard's eyelids never close, and the storeroom seals are unbroken. It is someone in this shop who is robbing me." "In the shop? But how? How could he?" "There are many ways to conceal a lump or two of gold, innocent one," put in the second craftsman gloomily. "Aye," agreed one of the apprentices, "I have heard of men hiding small ingots in their mouths." "Or under their sandal straps," said another, "or in a loaf of bread." "There are as many methods as there are thieves," Rek said wearily, "and we must discover the one which is plaguing us. The first step is to keep daily account of every grain, even the sweep. We shall catch him before long." Ranofer was standing like an image, a sharp suspicion in his mind. Who in this shop would steal gold? Who was treacherous enough, low enough, save Ibni the Babylonian? It was only too easy to picture his white, moist hand with its filthy fingernails reaching out stealthily, but there was no way to prove such a suspicion. The goldsmith's hand grasped Ranofer's shoulder and shook it gently. "What ails you, boy? Are you asleep? Or struck dumb?" I neither, Neb Goldsmith." Ranofer hesitated, his troubled eyes on the man before him. Rek was an unimpressive figure, similar in build and feature to 100 other men, with a suggestion of paunch, and a foot maimed long ago by spilled molten metal. The falcon ornament held in his tongs was no better than half the goldsmiths in Thebes could fashion. He was no genius like Za, no artist like Thutra, the father of Ranofer. He was only an honest, kindly artisan, just now saddened by treachery. "Nothing ails me, honored master," murmured the boy. "I only wondered what evil one could find it in his heart to rob so good a man." Rek's homely face relaxed with pleasure. He was not accustomed to being called honored master, but even his lowliest hiring. "Do not trouble your head about it, Ranofer. We make certain to weigh your sweep, that we may make this robber's task too difficult to continue." "Now," Rek frowned suddenly, explored the boy's bare shoulder with his fingers, then turned him about. "What is this? Another stripe on your young back?" "Nay, 2 of them. Who is it beats you, boy? Only last week?" "It is nothing to no one," Ranofer shrank hastily out of his grasp. "Your pardon, Nebrek. I will weigh the sweep now." Scarlet with shame, he dodged around the second craftsman's workbench and hurried to the scales. With eyes on the floor, he waited while the weigher sang out the measure to the scribe, then took his bowl and hurried out, leaving Rex still frowning after him. His shoulder had begun to throb and smart from the goldsmith's touch, like a sleeping devil aroused to angry wakefulness. But the greatest pain was in his mind. It was humiliating beyond measure to have attention called to those welts lying there across his back like the mark of the slave. Might the crocodiles eat that gaboo? Now they had all seen, everyone in the shop, and no doubt were scorning him for a poor sort of creature, cringing and puny, unable to defend himself. Then there was Ibni, heavy as a yoke. Responsibility settled over Ranofer's mind. He was convinced Ibni was the thief, though he could not say why. Ladling water into his bowl of sweepings from the big water jar, he wondered how he could prove it. The slimy creature might carry gold anywhere, in his mouth, under his sandal strap, in a loaf of bread. Imagine gold in a loaf of bread! Or in a wineskin? Ranofer stood motionless, feeling all his flesh crawl. In a wineskin. Perhaps in the very ones he had been carrying home to Gaboo each week, the ones whose contents were always emptied onto the pavement in the dead of night, as if the wine itself were of no value. Osiris the Merciful forbid it, thought the boy. If it is so, then I too have been a thief, though I did not know it. Nay, it cannot be so. It must not be so. Yet that slim little ingot, the one he had poured but a short time ago, how easily it would slip into a wineskin. He let the dipper crash back into the water jar and started for the small washing trays at the front of the courtyard, darting a glance toward the wire-maker's bench as he passed. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. Only one ingot lay beside the draw plate. When the Babylonian passed this way for the drink he had not wanted, 4 ingots had been there. Another coil of wire lay ready for the annealing. That accounted for one of them. The apprentice held another, greasing it for the draw plate. But where were the others? Where was the smallest one, which would slip so easily into a skin of wine? Ranofer's feet took him across the stretch of sun-warmed pavement to the wire-maker's bench without his ordering him to move. "Your work goes swiftly, Eloise," he said nervously. "Swiftly? Thoth's mercy! The snail has wings compared to the hours of this day. I vow I've been pulling wire since the first hill rose out of the waters of time, and still I've not done." But have you not? Only a short time ago there were 4 fresh-poured ingots on this bench, and behold, where are they now? Hopio's hand stopped their work. "Where would they be," he demanded, "on this bench and that, being drawn or hammered or—" His eyes narrowed with anger as he seized the boy's arm. "What is this you say? Do you accuse me of this thieving the master spoke of?" "Accuse you?" gasped Ranofer, aghast at the hornet's nest he had stirred up. "As Ma'at is my witness, I had no thought of it. Have the Kefs taken your senses, friend Hopio?" The apprentice loosed his arm, looking somewhat sheepish. "Aye, perhaps they have. I see you meant no harm. But when there's theft about, every man grows thin-skinned. By Ammon, I'm not sorry to see this thief caught, and the shop rid of him." "Nor will I," Ranofer said. He tried to smile carelessly, but the bowl he held was trembling. He had still not found out what he wanted to know. "Theft is a wicked thing," he went on, careful to avoid the hornets. "I have no doubt you have watched your ingots today as the falcon watches the lark." Hopio laughed as he threaded the tapered end of the greased golden rod through a hole in the draw plate. Grasping the point with his copper pincers, he began to tug it toward him, his muscles knotting. "That I have," he agreed jerkily. Abhi took two for bracelets, Zoser the little one for thread, and I myself have used the others. I'll not weigh short at the end of the day. You may stake your life on that." "I believe it, friend," murmured Ranofer. Zoser, he thought. Zoser has the little one. As he hurried on to the washing trace, he glanced towards Zoser's bench. There he was, pounding rhythmically upon 2 sheep hides, between 2 which the smallest ingot would be stretching flatter and flatter into a sheet thin enough to be cut into thread and woven like linen into beautiful shining cloth. Relief swept through Ranofer like a fresh breeze off the river. Ibni had not stolen the little ingot. Perhaps he had stolen nothing at all. "I'm imagining the whole thing," Ranofer told himself. "The wineskin has some other explanation. It must have. Someone else is the thief." "Welcome, friend, eyes on the ground," said a voice almost or half amused, half diffident. Ranofer looked up to find the new apprentice, Haket, smiling at him uncertainly over the washing trays. He was a boy of 12 or 13, no older than Ranofer himself, though he was bigger. Both boys still wore the youth lock, a thick strand of hair left to grow from one side of their shaven heads and fall in an ebony curl to the shoulder. Both also wore amulets dangling from one wrist to protect them from kefts. Neither could boast more than a single short garment, held at the waist by a rag of a sash. There the resemblance ended, however, for Haket was rich in prospects. He was safely apprenticed and destined to become as fine a goldsmith as teaching could make him. For a moment, pure envy filled Ranofer, as it had when Haket first appeared in the shop 3 days ago. Haket's smile wavered, and Ranofer controlled his feelings quickly. Realizing they must show in his face, with as civil a nod as he could muster, he stepped to the new boy's side, sat at the bench, and drew a washing tray toward him. "May your ka be joyful," he murmured. "Does the work go well?" "Aye, well enough, though I do not know why my head from my tail in this place, as the cat said when she tumbled into the fowler's net." After a moment's astonishment, jokes were a few in this life. Ranofer's rare smile spread slowly over his face. Haket brightened. "By Ammon," he said, "I thought you a surly type at first, but I see you're not. Listen, then. I know no more of what I'm doing than a hound knows of kittens. Do you understand this gold washing?" "Aye, of course I do." "Then instruct me, for the sake of Ta, the bearded. That scowling one, the first craftsman, said nothing but 'Wash these sweepings, young one,' with never a word as to how or why. Are they clean yet?" "Aye, but there's trash still with them in the water," said Ranofer, peering into Haket's bowl. "Have you not poured it through a cloth?" "Cloth?" echoed the other blankly. Ranofer pointed to the coarse linen straining cloths hanging below the bench. "Come, do as I do." Together they stretched cloths over the shallow washing trays, poured in water and gold together. As the cloth sank to the bottom of the tray, the particles of gold clung to it in a glittering residue, allowing the trash to be poured off along with the water. "Now again with fresh water," directed Ranofer. "Ah," Haket remarked presently, "I begin to find reason in this, as the priest said when he discovered the dead rat under the altar. How is it your hand is so practised, friend? Someone has taught you well." "My father taught me," said Ranofer, before he thought. "Your father? He is a goldsmith? The gods smile on you. What else does he teach you?" Ranofer was biting his tongue for mentioning it. "He teaches me nothing now," he answered curtly. "But why?" "Because he went to his tomb 10 months ago, to join my mother, who has been with the gods these many years." Haket glanced at him, then returned quickly to his work. "May their Baz have food and drink forever," he murmured. There was a moment's awkward silence, during which Ranofer struggled without much success against the familiar frightened loneliness that had swept in again as through an opened door. Haket said presently, "No one told me your name." "Ranofer, the son of Thutra." "Aye, I have heard of Thutra the goldsmith." "Many heard of him. He was a friend of Zau the master. Zau himself praised his work." "Many will hear of you too, perhaps, when you have finished your apprenticeship here and become a—" "I am not apprenticed here." The other turned in surprise. "You were not apprenticed to Rek the goldsmith? Then what am I doing here?" Ranofer's own thought flashed back into his mind. "Why does he place me here in the gold house if I'm never to learn anything?" Hard on that thought, though, followed the image of the wineskin like a dismaying answer. He turned to Haket more brusquely than he intended. "I am a porter. I pour ingots and wash sweepings and run errands." "Ibni's errands," he thought with a sinking heart. "For 5 debin a month. It is work you will not long be troubled with. After your first month, the hirelings will do it for you. I will do it for you. It is all I am allowed to do, yet I understand annealing and wire-making as well as the first craftsman. I have even graven armbands and hammered out cups." He sloshed gold and water into his tray. "Perhaps not very good cups," he added more humbly, "but they were cups. And gone now," he added to himself, "gone like everything else, like my father's house, and the garden, and the acacia trees, and old Mira, who used to make me date cakes, and the workshop with the shelves all around the walls, and golden collars and daggers hanging from them. Gone like my father." The workshop came clear in his mind until it seemed as if he were there again, this minute, smelling the acacia blossoms just outside the door. Hour upon hour in the old days, he had leaned upon his father's workbench, watching the long, strong hands of the artist shape a bowl or a massive ornament, fashion chains and necklaces of such delicate grace that the eye delighted in them. He could remember the very feel of the smooth worn wood under his elbows, the heat of the lamp on his cheek, as he learned with his eyes, with his memory, asking countless questions. Even through the last 2 years, the ailing years of Thutra's life, the artist had lain on a couch in the workroom, watching his son's first efforts at raising and engraving, teaching him to improve his designs. Besides the gold work, there was Yeti, the old greyhound to romp with, and the tales his father read him from the leather scrolls, and every morning lessons at the scribe's school, so that Ranofer too had begun to read a little. Now there was nothing, less than nothing. Now there were hunger and beatings, and this new hideous suspicion about the wineskins. Haket cleared his throat uncertainly. "It is an evil thing that you cannot go on learning," he said. "Where do you live, then, if not in the apprentices' quarters, or with your parents?" It was a moment before Ranofer answered. He kept his eyes on his hands, which were raking the gold straps aimlessly about on the cloth. At last he said, "I live with my half-brother, Gabu the stone-cutter." "Oh, you did not say you had a brother." "Half-brother," Ranofer repeated. He grudged admitting even that relationship. Until the confused and grief-stricken morning of his father's death 10 months ago, he had been only vaguely aware that there was another son of Thutra. Somewhere in Thebes, a firstborn, child of an early marriage whose name was never mentioned in Thutra's presence. Twisting the wet cloth around the mass of sweepings, Ranofer cast about for some way to change the subject. He did not want to talk of these things, or even think of them. He must speak of something else quickly before this boy could ask more questions. Haket was already talking. "Half-brother, then, but I do not understand this half-brother of yours, my friend. Why does he not apprentice you to wreck, that you may learn to make beautiful things like your father?" Because I must earn the deben. 5 a month, when he could be learning the skill that would bring him dozens. The answer sounded foolish even to himself, and in the light of what he now suspected, it was absurd. Nervously avoiding Haket's puzzled gaze, he added, "Gabu cares nothing for gold working. He sees no value in apprenticing me to wreck." "Then it is strange he does not apprentice you to himself at the stone-cutting shop. It seems to me he would think your labor there of far more value than—" "I know not what he thinks. He prefers me to work here." "Then why, since you are here, will he not—" "Let me be!" Ranofer gasped, whirling on him. "Can you not let me be? I am tired of your questions." Abruptly he left the bench, twisting and wringing the bag of gold scraps, scarcely knowing where he stepped. He blundered his way to the far end of the courtyard and spread his sweepings on a sun-warmed sheep hide to dry. Already he was miserably regretting his rudeness to the young apprentice, who he knew had meant no harm. Now Haket would again decide that he was a surly type, and would no longer care to be friends. Too often it happened so. If only they would not ask me questions, thought Ranofer. Why must they make me talk of these things that I wish to forget? Meanwhile, there was this gold to be dried and melted, and in haste, too, for the great god Ra was sinking lower and lower in the sky. Soon the god's shining boat would touch the tops of the western cliffs, and the working day would be done. Before that, an ingot must be poured from these sweepings, as the first craftsman had ordered. Ranofer spread a fresh cloth over the glittering debris on the sheepskin, pressing it down with his palms to hasten the drying process. He found himself thinking how easy it would be to drop a few of these scraps into a wineskin when no one was watching. True, the Babylonians seldom handled the sweep, nor had he stolen the little ingot as Ranofer had at first suspected, but he did not have access to the storeroom. He did not work all day washing the raw gold, fresh from the mines, in the big vats at the rear of the shop. That was the answer. That was where Ibni got the gold, from the leather sacks, heavy with trash and gravel, brought in each week from the mines in the southern desert. What could be easier than to drop a pinch of gold dust, a few nuggets, into a wineskin instead of into the washing vats? The difference in weight would be written off as trash, which defied precise weighing, or laid to a fault in the scales. In fact, it had taken Rek and his wearer all these months to decide that it was not the scales. Sick at heart, Ranofer transferred his sweepings to a crucible and set it on the coals. He must tell Rek at once, of course, but watching the flames glow scarlet around the crucible, Ranofer thought about that but. To inform on Ibni would be nothing. Ranofer would be heartily glad to see the last of him, and for the shop it would be a good riddance. But to do that, he must inform on himself as well. He must confess that it was he who had carried the gold away, time after time, every 10 or 15 days of all the months he had worked at the shop. And, Ranofer went cold with panic, it would mean informing on Gabu as well. Great Aman, he would kill me, thought the boy. He would kill me and throw me to the crocodiles, or sell me for a slave, as he is always threatening, or— In the crucible, the gold collapsed suddenly into the molten scarlet. Ranofer snatched the stones that protected his hands and began pouring the metal into the mold he had oiled to receive it. It was difficult. His hands were shaking so that he could scarcely control the flow. I am not really sure of all this, he thought. I have no proof. That's it. One must have proof. Perhaps it is all my own imagining. I will not tell Rec yet. When the day was done, he hurried from the shop, unable to meet the goldsmith's kindly eye.